Happy Monday to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Ramisha Shade. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. It is time to get back to work, back to the grind, and back to tracking the tropics for me. Let's talk about what's going on out there and see if we have anything to worry about. We're creeping closer and closer to the end of October. Closer to Halloween, about 10 days out. And of course, typically this is the time of the hurricane season where conditions really start to improve a bit. The chance for tropical systems, tropical depressions, tropical storms and hurricanes usually starts to decrease. However, it was a pretty active weekend. In fact, Friday evening, we didn't have any named storms out there in the Atlantic Basin, but over the weekend, we had not one, but two additional named storms, and one of those popped up and briefly became a hurricane. So we actually had Nadine and Oscar to develop over the weekend. So Nadine actually made landfall Saturday afternoon around Belize City, bringing some heavy rain to parts of Central America and parts of southern Mexico. Then it pushed out into the eastern Pacific. We also had Oscar to develop. That one quickly blew up from a very weak tropical wave to a tropical storm and even a Category 1 hurricane for a little bit over the weekend. Now it is weakened back to a tropical storm. So where does that leave us for the season? Well, we are now up to 15 named storms, which is above our average of 14, and we're up to 10 hurricanes, and out of those, 4 have become major hurricanes. Of course, that would be Category 3 or greater. So those 4 major hurricanes would be Beryl, Helene, Milton, and also Kirk, which was briefly a Category 4. So we've had a very busy hurricane season for the Atlantic Basin. So let's talk about Nadine. As I mentioned, Nadine started to get a little more organized Friday evening. It wasn't a named storm yet. It was a tropical wave. But then over the weekend, it did become a tropical storm, and it did make landfall right around Belize City. Then it rolled across the Central America, Mexico region, dumped some heavy rain, and now it reemerged, or the remnants of it at least, into the eastern Pacific. It quickly started to get organized last night and this morning, and now as of the 2 p.m. advisory, National Hurricane Center is saying that Nadine is now Kristy. It has a name. It is back up to tropical storm status. Now, you may ask yourself, why is the name different? Well, it's due to the fact that Nadine was in the Western Caribbean Sea right before it made landfall, and now Kristy is in the Eastern Pacific. So there's a different list or different set of names when you're talking about the Atlantic Basin versus the Eastern Pacific, Central Pacific. So now Nadine is Kristy. It is a pretty organized tropical storm, and now it is to the south and west of Acapulco, but it is going to be moving to the west away from Mexico. So that is some good news. Right now, still a fairly weak tropical storm, 40-mile-per-hour winds, but notice the trend over the rest of the week. It is actually going to be rolling over some fairly warm waters environment that is really conducive for strengthening and fueling this tropical system. So I think Tropical Storm Kristy will likely be Hurricane Kristy by early Wednesday morning. Notice 75-mile-per-hour winds by 1 a.m. Wednesday. Then as we go into Thursday, check that out. It could potentially be up to a Category 2 hurricane. So it's very good news that Kristy is moving away from the U.S. and away from Mexico. At this point, currently rolling very fast, tracking to the west right around 17 miles per hour. So Nadine, of course, stayed to the south of the U.S. Gulf Coast, making landfall in Central America and Mexico, and Kristy will stay away from us as well. But of course, we'll continue to track it. But it's just interesting how that system went from one name to the other, but at least it is moving away from land. Now let's get over to Oscar. This is the other tropical system that popped up on us over the weekend. This one was looking pretty pathetic, pretty weak, like it was about to just fizzle out Friday evening and Friday night. But then it decided, hey, I'm not finished yet. I'm going to start to re-strengthen. So that's what it did over the weekend, and it did briefly blow up to a Category 1 hurricane. And right now it is impacting eastern parts of Cuba. It has gotten weaker for today. Here are some of the computer models or spaghetti model plots showing the general direction that Oscar will take. It's actually going to get picked up by a trough likely and kicked off to the north and then northeast. So that will take it away from the U.S. Now it still may clip southeastern parts of the Bahamas. So those are some areas that may have to deal with tropical storm force winds and also some heavy rain. However, it is going to stay away from Florida and the rest of the U.S. So that is good news. It looks like it could get close to Bermuda as we head through the week and bring some heavy rainfall there, but at this point it is not going to impact the east coast of the U.S. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm Oscar. Also 40-mile-per-hour winds. Movement is to the north-northwest at 7 miles per hour. So it's already started that shift to the north-northwest, and eventually it will make more of a turn to the northeast, and that will take it even farther away from the U.S. So 40-mile-per-hour winds at this point. As it crosses over the southeastern Bahamas, it will likely still have winds around 40 miles per hour, and that's likely going to be tonight into tomorrow. Then as we go through the middle and end of the week, it will push over or very close to the Bermuda area, but it is expected to actually get picked up by another disturbance or storm system. And that should be the end of at least a tropical cyclone as we head towards the end of the week. But still, there will be the threat for some heavier downpours for the Bermuda area. So those are the two systems that we are watching. Nadine is gone, but Kristy has reformed in the Eastern Pacific, and we still have Oscar, which is a tropical storm right over eastern Cuba. So what does our exclusive Fox model Futurecast say? Well, here is a look at that hour-by-hour track. Notice this is Tropical Storm Oscar. It continues to push to the north and then to the north-northeast. Notice some of that heavy rain rolling right over Bermuda around Wednesday afternoon, 2 p.m. So even if it's not a tropical system, then there will still be the threat for some of those tropical downpours for Bermuda by the middle of the week. After that, like I said, it should get picked up by another disturbance, another storm system, and likely lose tropical characteristics as it pushes even farther north, away from Bermuda and away from the U.S. So it looks like for now, things will remain quiet for a change in the Gulf of Mexico, and they should be pretty quiet in the Western Caribbean Sea as well. Those temperatures certainly were cooling off nicely last week with a cold front that pushed through the Gulf, but they're trying to heat up a little bit more, but still a little cooler than they've been for much of the hurricane season. 78 degrees, as you can see up towards the northern Gulf of Mexico, 78 to 80 degrees, and then the rest of the Gulf lingering between 80 to 82 degrees. So that's still water warm enough to support tropical development. However, the chance is getting lower as we near the end of October, and it will be even lower throughout the month of November. Here are some areas, though, typically where we see some action, some development in the month of October. That would be the Western Atlantic. That would be parts of the Gulf of Mexico, particularly the south and southeastern portions of the Gulf, and also western sections of the Caribbean Sea. So those are going to be some of the hot spots or areas that we'll be monitoring for the rest of this month, which is quickly starting to wind on down. As we spring into November, of course, that usually is the official kickoff for many of you of the holiday season, especially as we get to Thanksgiving and thereafter. Usually the day after Thanksgiving, you see Christmas gifts, Christmas decorations up very quickly, but we're getting close to that holiday season time of the year, and that's usually when you start to say, okay, hurricane season should be over. Yes, it will be the final month of hurricane season. However, there's still a low chance we could have a little bit of development for parts of the central and western Atlantic, and maybe even into central and west central parts of the Caribbean. Chance for development of tropical systems in the Gulf for November is extremely low, but it's not impossible. So that's why we don't need to panic. We don't need to stop thinking about it, but just make sure that you are aware that it could still happen. Be alert if anything pops up, but keep in mind that the chance is much lower. So to sum it up, we are now up to 15 named storms. Notice we're now above average for the number of named storms, at least for our average season. Also, compared to an average season, we're now up to 10 hurricanes. Normally during an entire hurricane season, we'd have about 7 hurricanes, and now we're up to 4 major hurricanes, and normally we'd have 3. So guess what? This was expected to be an above average hurricane season, and in category 1, category 2, category 3, we are above the norm in all 3 of those categories. Also for named storms, this is the official NOAA forecast that came out earlier in the season. They gave a range of what they were expecting for number of named storms, hurricanes, and major hurricanes. So notice in all 3 categories, they expected an above average season. So of course we've reached that number of hurricanes they expected, we reached that number of major hurricanes, but we still are a couple of named storms behind what they were projecting for that number of named storms, 17 to 24, and we're now up to 15. So we're above average for the average number of named storms, so we haven't quite reached that NOAA range. But guess what? There's still a little over a month to go, so we could end up getting a few more named storms. Hopefully not, but it is something we'll be tracking for you closely. So we are getting closer to the end of October, and then we've got 1 more month to worry about it. But notice the general trend. We're on our way down the roller coaster as the chance for a tropical cyclone formation really starts to decrease during this time of the year. So like I've been saying, be alert, be prepared any time of the year for tropical action heading our way, especially during any part of hurricane season. But keep in mind that the chance is going to be lower, but we will have to get all the way through the end of November. Of course, that would be November 30th. So keep in mind, we will be here tracking it closely for you day by day, and we'll have these updates for you every afternoon. So make sure to check it out so that you'll know exactly what could potentially be heading your way or maybe heading towards your future vacation spot. We'll have that answer for you every afternoon. That will do it for your tropical update for today. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Ramisha Shade. Have a great one.